there are a lot of criticism over this, what do you call, treasury bond issue.
Yes.
I think it has happened somewhere in February.
That's right.
And so, what do you, as a, what do you call, governor of the central bank, and I think you are the main, what do you call, head of monetary board.
That's right.
So, what can you say about all these criticisms?
Yes. Well, the first thing I want to establish is that I have been cleared by the Supreme Court of this country, no less. Yeah. The Supreme Court bench of 3 judges headed by the Chief Justice, the Lordship himself, cleared me of any wrongdoing in this whole case. Let me get to the specifics. What I tried to do there was, I tried to change a system which was heavily loaded against good governance. So basically, we had a bond distribution system. Government bonds were being distributed to the public through private placements, through private deals.
Can you explain? Because the normal general public, most of the time, they doesn't know what's an auction and what's a private.
That's right. So
you can just briefly.
Now, in all major markets of the world, America, Europe, Australia,
England,
wherever, there's a specific way in which the government borrows money.
Central bank, through the central bank.
Through the central bank or through the treasury. The government basically sells bonds, and those bonds, when people buy them, that money is given to the government in the form of a borrowing.
For interest.
That's right, for interest. And the rate of interest is determined by a market. In other words, you have to have an auction to determine at what interest rate the market is willing to lend money to the government. And that is a very important economic indicator, because the rate of interest that is determined by the market gives a signal on the state of the health of the economy. So it's very important, this whole process of having auctions in the treasury bond markets anywhere in the world. Now, when I came to Sri Lanka, I found a very curious situation where no auction was being held. And when I went to the public debt department, they told me that they have a system of giving these through what are called private or direct placements to people through an agent, through authorized what are called primary dealers, who call up the desk in the public debt department and do this in a very secretive manner. Now, this has 2 consequences. First of all, we are not sure what the market rate is. The interest rates are artificial because they are determined over the phone by 2 people, and nobody can verify whether that is the correct rate or not. The second point, and this is the important point, is that if you artificially...
private placement, are they what do you call inform all the what do you call registered primary dealers, or they are going one by one?
One by one. Nobody knows.
Nobody knows.
Exactly.
It is not transparent.
It is not transparent. It is not published. This data is not published anywhere.
Yeah.
Right?
Otherwise, you have to put the public what do you call paper notice, and
that's right.
Then only you have to go for this thing.
Exactly.
It has not happened.
It has not happened. So what happens in an auction is that you publish in the newspapers an advertisement where you state what you think is a reasonable rate of interest and ask people to come and bid for different maturities and amounts. Exactly. So what happened in that period in February was that I was finding it difficult to raise money for the government. Now the government sends us
government means what do you call treasury is requesting money from the central bank.
That's right.
For their day-to-day expenses.
For their day-to-day expenses. So every week they give us a target, 10 billion, 20 billion, sometimes even 100 billion, that they have to raise in a particular week. And clearly the tax that the government collects is not, in Sri Lanka's case, adequate to meet its expenditure. So it borrows a fair amount. Now, that borrowing is done through the central bank. And every month we are given a target, an estimate of how much money the government needs every week. So in this particular week, in the 27th of February, which was a Friday, we had been asked to raise 13.5 billion rupees. And that amount had to be raised for delivery to the Ministry of Finance on Monday, the 2nd of March. Now, I was debating with the department concerned about whether we can raise this amount of money, the public debt department, whether we can raise this money effectively through this system of private placements. In fact, I discussed this at the Cabinet Committee on Economic Affairs. The Honourable Prime Minister, the Honourable Minister of Finance, all these gentlemen were there. and they asked me why I am not having the system of auctions, which is the normal way you do this. So I told them I too was not very happy with this system, and I came and conveyed this to my officers in the department, and we had a board meeting of the Central Bank Monetary Board, where on the 23rd of February I suggested that we start the auctions immediately, and they agreed. So we had this auction on the 27th of February, and we advertised 1 billion rupees to be sold of bonds.
At the start?
At the start.
Yes.
Of course, I was asking my officers whether we can advertise 10 billion, because we needed much more than 1 billion.
Yes, yes.
We needed 13.5
billion.
You see? So to me it seems strange why we would advertise 1 billion, but the response I got was, we may not get that much of interest, and the central bank will look bad if we advertise 10 billion and we don't get 10 billion. So they told me, okay, you go and advertise 1 billion.
Confidence.
That's right. It's a confidence issue. And we don't want to make the government look as if it's desperate in the markets for a new government. So I agreed. I said, okay, we'll put 1 billion, but let's see how the market responds. And we also said that we will pay 12.5% interest on that bond, because it's a 30-year bond.
30-year bond.
It's a 30-year bond.
This is the first time the central bank has gone for 30-year bond?
No, we have done it for the last 2 years. In 2013 and in 2014, there have been issuances of 30-year bonds. That's right. So it's a fairly well-known instrument. The bond was advertised on Thursday the 26th for 1 billion at a coupon of 12.5%. And on that same day, I asked the department, the public debt department, how much they had raised through the private placement methodology that they were using before. And they said they had only raised 3.5 billion. And I was getting a bit worried, because of 13.5, if we have only raised 3.5, something is wrong, and we may not be able to deliver money to the government on Monday. And this is, as a governor, this is my duty, it's my responsibility. So I told them, look, on Friday we have this auction. Let's see whether we can get more money from the auction. And so on the morning of the auction, I went down to the Department of the Public Debt with 2 other deputy governors to ask the head of the department what was happening, how much they were getting. They told me that they had received 20 billion worth of bids, which made me very happy. And there have been cases in the past where, even though we advertise, say, 1 billion, we take 2, 5 billion, larger amounts.
30%, something like
exactly. That. In fact, in the case of treasury bills, we have even taken 10 times. So I said, look, if we have done this before, if we have, in the case of treasury bills, for instance, taken 10 times the amount that we advertise, why don't we do it now? Otherwise, there's no way we can raise the 13.5 for Monday, which is what the government wants us to do. So we looked at the numbers, and we found that, coincidentally, if we accepted 10 billion, the highest interest rate we would pay on the bids would be 12.5%, right? Which is what we had advertised the day before. Just to give you an idea of how the auction works, different primary dealers bid different rates of interest.
Yes, it's lots.
It's lots, exactly. And they give different quantities also at various interest rates. And we amalgamate those in descending order, and then have what you call a cut-off point, so that the interest rate does not go up too much, right? Now, I asked the question, the last auction for 30-year bonds was conducted in May 2014. And at that auction, the cut-off had been around 13%, and the weighted average of all those interest rates came to 11.75.
It's a weighted average.
The weighted average of all those bids. So I asked the public debt department.
Just to comparison.
Just as a way of comparison, if we took 10 billion, what would be the weighted average
rate?
They informed me it would be 11.73, which means it would be slightly below what it was last time. So to me, this was perfect, because we could get exactly 10 billion plus the 3.5 billion we had already raised, which means we have raised the amount the government wanted, and at the same time, we have raised it in a manner where the interest rate has not changed from the previous auction. So that was the basis of the decision. There was a tender board which is comprising of different senior officers of the central bank. I spoke to them and I said, as governor, I would recommend that you take 10 billion, but you go and decide amongst yourselves what you think is realistic. So they went and they decided.
They will do it as a committee or individual?
It's a committee.
It's a committee.
It's a committee comprising of a senior deputy governor and several heads of department, including the public debt department, and they all sit and they want to judge whether the interest rate is stable and is in keeping with monetary policy. So that basically was what happened. So that was the basis on which we did this. Now, they agreed with me and we raised the 10 billion that day. And of course, subsequently the criticism was that why had I raised it to 10 billion? Well, I said
instead
that
of 1 billion.
The government ordered it, exactly, instead of 1 billion. I said the government had ordered it and we had done this in the past. It's not as if this was something new. The second criticism was that the interest rate was too high. But my point is, we advertised 12.5%. We didn't pay anything over 12.5%. And on average, we paid only 11.73. We only advertised during auctions.
Yes.
So the last auction was held in May 2014. At that time, it was 13% that was advertised.
But
This time it was 12.5. We reduced it by half.
Yes.
But
So
in this auction, we didn't
follow the same procedure.
We followed the same procedure. We did not exceed 12.5, which is the rate at which we advertised. On this question of this perpetual treasuries, this company was admittedly, one of the shareholders is my son-in-law. Also, one of the directors was a sister of the former governor of the central bank. Right?
She's still there? Or?
I think she resigned subsequently. My son-in-law resigned on the day I became governor.
Okay, because of the
conflict of interest. They were given a license by the previous governor. His sister became a member of their board of directors. So, you know, it's not as if this company was not connected to the central bank before my time. This is what I want to make very clear. You know, this company had very close links with the previous governor and with the central bank for a long period of time before I had become governor. And of course, I insisted that, you know, my son-in-law should resign from his directorships and not have anything to do with the company thereafter. Now, in terms of the auction itself, the bids are received electronically. So there's no way anybody can tamper with how the bids are received. And once they are received electronically, the whole process is very transparent. And I can guarantee that there was no hanky-panky anywhere in terms of giving unfair allocations to anybody. The tender board, who sat independently of myself, have vouchsafed that all procedures were handled properly. And it just so happened that this company tends to specialize in trading this 30-year bond. They have a track record.